A Retro Ramble with.
This episode's special guest is no stranger to interviews, as he forms part of the Retro Hour podcast and has his own show on the commercial radio station Gem. He also has his own very successful YouTube channel where he looks at various systems from the 80s and 90s, with his favourite being the Amiga. It gives me great pleasure to talk to Dan Wood. Hi Dan.
That was quite the intro, Dave. Thank you very much for inviting me on.
That's fine. It's well, like I say, I've been watching your channel for years and years. I think your love of the Amiga is very similar to mine, even down to the. I believe you got your A500 Plus in 1991, the Cartoon Classics pack.
Yeah. Yeah, weirdly, because I know there is, I don't know if you've seen this on the Commodore Amiga Facebook group, there's a guy that's been making a lot of the replica boxes, you know, the old Amiga boxes that they originally came in, and he just did a Cartoon Classics one, actually, the other day, so loads of people have just been, like, posting about that again over the last couple of days, so I've thought tonight I've got to get it out of the cupboard and get that set up again, and have a bit of a blast on Lemmings and Captain Planet again.
Oh, well, it costs, like I say, exactly the same in show. I got mine in 91. I think you've showed a picture of you opening it, and I've got one very similar. My dad in them days used to video absolutely everything. He was video mad, and you used to say to him, what are you videoing for? What are you videoing for? But now I'm so glad he did, of opening the Amiga. So, but I suppose my first
Were your eyes on stalks as well when you opened it?
Oh, definitely. I couldn't believe it, because a bit like yourself, we'd got, I think you had this, was it the Plus 4 or the Commodore 16 first?
Yeah, Commodore Plus 4.
When I first wanted a computer, my mum, bless her, went to the local electronic shop and bought the Toshiba MSX, because I think it was £99 or something. Right. So a bit like you, it was like, oh yeah, it's really good, but nobody else had one. So, so I suppose my first question is to you: what tips would you give me to interview you? Because obviously you're the master at interviewing.
Wow, the master. Well, we obviously. Our podcast is, for people that haven't heard the podcast, we do an interview pretty much every show. And I think we're on about like episode number 270 coming up soon, I think, we recorded recently. So, yeah, I mean, when I started doing it, it was kind of, you know, obviously a process that you've got to kind of learn. And I think, you know, the best tips would always be, you know, when I'm prepping an interview for the podcast, obviously, you know, do a bit of background research first. We normally do, you know, when we're interviewing developers, we look on Moby games and stuff like that, and you know, play a few of the games as well, check out old magazine articles. We often look into all that kind of background. One tip that I got quite early on is, because when I found, you know, when I started doing interviews, I always found like I needed to be as much part of it as they were, which actually isn't the case, because we get people on our podcast to tell their stories. So often a big part of it is, you know, I'll ask a question, then I'll turn my microphone off and just sit there until they finish what they're saying, because otherwise I'd chip in too much and have to, you know, and obviously I want to hear what they say and I didn't want to interrupt the story. So it's definitely a process that, you know, you're always learning as you go along, but I think having done, like, you know, 270 of them now, there are a few little things that I've kind of picked up along the way.
You've had some really big names on the podcast, like the Oliver Twins. I think Dara O'Brien was on recently. The list goes on and on. Dominic Diamond, Bill Steely from Mike Pros. I enjoyed listening to that one. I tell you which one I did enjoy. The ones where you talk to people about who've been in the magazine industry and their side of the story from behind the scenes, if you like.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if you're the same as me. I used to spend all my pocket money on magazines, you know, when I was a kid and a teenager. And we did, you know, Amiga magazines. That's something I'd buy religiously. And I was tapping my dad up for, like, you know, $5 when we went into Wade Smith. And we did an interview, one episode with Tony Horgan, who used to edit CU Amiga. That was really interesting, kind of getting the backstory on, you know, because these guys were like, in that age, you know, especially when it was kind of pre-internet, really. That's where you got all your news from. And these guys seem like really famous to me, you know, guys like Tony Horgan and Ben Voss, who used to edit Amiga format as well. So, you know, it was amazing to, you know, I was a bit starstruck doing those ones.
I'm not surprised. It's exactly what you said. That was like the internet of today. It wasn't at your fingertips. You had to wait till next month until the magazine came out, and then you rushed down to the shops, didn't you, to buy it.
Yeah, and we had Jazz Rignall as well. Obviously, he was like, superstar journalist back in the day, and it's just really interesting finding out. 'Cause obviously, it's not quite the same with print today. They don't quite have the sway that they used to 20, 30 years ago. But these guys, I mean, they were like central to the industry, really, weren't they? I mean, magazine reviews back then could make or break a game, so they were very powerful people.
Yeah, and there was definitely, because I know a bit later on, there was talks of companies paying for magazine reviews and like tried to get higher scores. I was talking to Dave Perry the other day, and he was saying that it was such a fine line between, he didn't want to lose the sponsors and the advertisers, but on the flip side of that, he didn't want to lose the people either if he gave it an amazing review if it was a rubbish game.
Yeah, and I think we've had stories, of magazine editors who said, they give a game a bad review, and then the next issue, that company will pull all their advertising, in a rage about it. And normally a month or two later, they'll be like, "All right, book it again," because the next game's coming out soon.
Yeah, get it out there quick.
Yeah.
So, going back to your early days then, and obviously the +4, but I also believe that, I think on one of your videos, you talk about the Archimedes and the Amiga, and you were saying that was your first foray into computers. Is that how it was?
Yeah, I mean, it was actually the BBC Micro that was the first one I ever used. Because when I was at school, from about the age of 5, really, I think, I had my eye on the BBC Micros in the classroom, and like, it looks quite interesting. Because my parents both worked in IT. My dad was an electronic engineer. My mum was a mainframe programmer back in the 70s. So you could say I've got it in my DNA, really, the interest in technology. But then when I was at school, I had a really good teacher actually called Mrs. Moore, who, obviously back then that was kind of like you turn on the BBC Micro and you jump straight into BASIC. And she was really passionate about it. And she would, we programmed in Logo, the programming language. And we had one of the robotic turtles that went around the floor in the room with a plotter pen on it. And she'd often let us, me and my friend Gary, who were really interested in computers, she'd let us stay back after school, because we finished at like 3 p.m. and she'd do a mark until about 5. So my mum was, "Oh, you can stay for a bit." And we tried to make a text adventure game on the BBC Micro, I remember, which was way harder than I imagined it would be. And we did like Christmas cards as well, printing them out on the LC10 dot matrix printer, which I'm sure my relatives love getting those. But yeah, so the BBC Micro was a machine that really got me hooked initially. And, I used to get into school early in the mornings to set them up. So I was excited just to use them for a bit before my classes. And then, obviously when I went to secondary school, that's when we had the Acorn Archimedes as well, that all our classes were done on. And they were beautiful machines. I mean, I don't know how much experience you've got with them, but they were fantastic machines, I thought.
Definitely. I think when I watched the review you did on, it was spot on. The conversions of the Amiga were nearly there, and the music was definitely MIDI style, as I usually called it, like the PC. But when it came to the 3D, it wiped the floor with the Amiga. You know what I mean? There's no way the Amiga could have pulled that off without it jerking about all over the place.
Yeah, and I mean, that was quite an achievement. But I think obviously had that powerful hardware in there. But again, there's only a handful of games came out for it just because it was never, I mean, it wasn't affordable really for a home computer. I mean, I think the cheapest ones were at least 100 quid more than an Amiga 500. The earlier ones I think were retailing for about 700-800 quid, which, in today's money is a lot, never mind in 1991, 92.
Yeah, I used to have a Saturday job in a computer store in Chesterfield where I live, and called Microfun, and we had the Amigas on the top shelf, and we had an Archimedes, but everybody came in and bought the Amigas. It was the Backpack and the Flight of Fantasy. It was never the Archimedes, bless it.
Even though it was a good machine, I just don't think it was considered very cool by kids, was it? Because you used it at school. I think that was probably part of the problem, even though you had that great hardware in there.
Yeah, that's it. It was attached to school, weren't it? It's funny you talk about the BBC, because I think everybody of our generation, everybody started on the BBC at school. Was yours on a trolley to wheel into the classrooms, or were they static?
Oh yeah, they're on trolleys. We actually used to. We had 4 of them in our school. We had 2 BBC Bs and we had 2 Masters. And then that was all I did. I'd get in at like 8:30 in the morning, and I'd take them out of a big iron safe that we used to lock them up in overnight. That's how valuable, computers were in the late 80s. Then I'd set them up on the trolleys, wheel them into whichever classroom's going to use them that morning, connect up the Cub CRT monitors, and
Cubs, yeah.
They were gorgeous monitors, weren't they? Proper like tanks, weren't they? Like that big metal case.
I
The
forgot
amount of
all about
static
the
electric
Cubs.
shocks I got. Yeah.
Because it was
Just one of them.
literally
Like,
square.
well, yeah. And I was ready to walk across the nylon carpet and put your finger on it and get a zap every time.
Hair stuck up on it.
Yeah, it was like static electricity everywhere. And obviously the 5 1/4 inch floppy drives you had to plug in underneath, to fiddle around trying to get those in as well. So yeah, every morning I'd set them up on the trolleys and just, whichever class was going to be using them that day, I'd wheel them into. So.
And everybody's face lit up because they were like, oh, we've got the computer today.
Yeah, so that's when you knew it was going to be a good day, yeah. And we even did like stuff like, we started doing our school homework on them. Like there was a word processor called Folio, if you remember that on the BBC Micro, that we used to use for quite a bit of word processing.
It's like I say, my mind it remembers things, but it's a bit foggy the older I get.
Yeah.
I remember playing, as probably everybody does, Granny's Garden on it vividly.
Oh yeah.
I think everybody played Granny's Garden on the BBC Micro.
I think the witch on Granny's Garden is still the most terrifying video game boss ever.
Yeah. Well,
but
to
she
be
pops
honest,
on that screen.
I never realised. I've just done a video actually on it. That it came out for the C64 and the Spectrum as well. I never realised that. I thought it was just BBC Micro, but apparently the company's still going today as well. The Formation software company's still going today. So,
I've got it on the Amiga as well. It actually came out on the Amiga, Granny's Garden.
Did it?
And it's a pretty good. It's a pretty good conversion on there. I mean, that is one of the few versions I think that are readily available, to download from sites. If you do a bit of googling, you can find it. But you're right that they do protect the IP still to this day. I think they sell a version of it now that's kind of upgraded a bit, but I think it still runs inside like a BBC emulation wrapper.
Oh, flipping heck. I never knew that. I know it's, like you say, the protective of the copyright of it, 'cause it's not one of the ones that are freely available, obviously. So, obviously, the Amiga's your favourite. I think, well, I'm assuming the Amiga's your favourite system. Is it your favourite system?
Oh, yeah, it has to be, doesn't it? Yeah, I mean, like you said, when I got that A500 Plus, coming from a Commodore Plus 4, it didn't feel like jumping a generation. It felt like jumping about 30 years into the future. And you're talking before about the Cartoon Classics pack. I don't know if you're the same, but when I booted up that the Simpsons intro, Bart Simpson, it looked like a cartoon on the screen. It was like, blew my mind.
It took me back to Christmas Day 1991.
Yeah, it was like, I mean, you come from an 8-bit machine to that, like a proper cartoon. And yeah, it was the first thing I booted up on my Amiga, and I was like, wow, I'm in for a ride.
Can you remember on the, I don't know if you did the same, but on the deluxe paint package, obviously you got the main disc and you got an art disc. And on one of the discs, there were like eyes and noses and stuff, and you could make photo fits with it. Is that something you did?
Yeah, we used to do that. Yeah, the different shaped heads, I remember, didn't they? And then you could put the different noses on and the eyes, and yeah, we used to make some right freaky looking things on that, and then print them out and put them up around the house. Deluxe paint was brilliant as well. I mean, it was like that just felt like having like a Disney cartoon studio on your desk, didn't it? Even though I think what did the A500 Plus come with, like a megabyte of RAM? You could about 15 frames before it ran out, I think, but it was still amazing.
Yeah, definitely. Well, and even what you said about the badge, I preferred that badge compared to any of the others. The fact that it looked more professional, the A500 Plus bit, than just the Commodore logo. Yeah,
it actually said the name of the computer on it. One thing I found with Commodore though is that I always remember that it was like A-500 Plus. And then the A600 was just A. They had no consistency with the naming of the machine.
What was your opinion of the A600?
See, when it came out at the time, when did that come out? That was April '92. It wasn't long after. No, the 500 Plus.
Yeah, it wasn't a long time because I think the A500 Plus was the shortest lived of the Amigas, weren't it? I believe.
Yeah, so I mean, it was only on the market then for about 5-6 months, and I remember because I used to buy all the magazines, and I remember the headlines in like Amiga Shopper and Amiga Format, like A500 is dead, and I'm like, oh, I only got this machine like 2 or 3 months ago. And I remember it feeling like, a punch to the stomach. And I remember my mum being a bit peed off. She was like, well, we just invested all this, £400, a lot of money back then. now that it's going to be obsolete. I mean, all the magazines were like, there's such a big install base that it's going to be, supported for years to come. But it did feel like, you bought this thing that, was the shiniest new technology 4 or 5 months ago. Now all of a sudden it's on the scrap heap. And I think there was a lot of resentment in the Amiga market for the A600, which was kind of marketed as the replacement for the A500, because, the 500 was such a loved machine. And that was kind of the same. I mean, I remember seeing it in like my local computer store and in Tandy and Dixon's and like, so really, I mean, what we call it today is it's no different to like an Xbox S or a cost reduced version, really, is it? That's all it was.
Yeah.
Which is common today. But back then it was like, they're trying to market it as a completely new machine. And in hindsight, I mean, today I actually prefer the A600 to the A500. So you've got advantages like, you can put a compact flash card in there easy enough. You've got the PCM CIA port for putting your compact flash cards in and transferring files between other machines. And I've got mine here with like, Wi-Fi card in it and Vampire inside as well. So it's actually a great little machine now.
Yeah. It's I think, like you say, at the time, it annoyed a lot of people because obviously they got the 500 plus for Christmas and then within 6 months it was out. Well, not outdated, but it wasn't the latest machine. I suppose one of the things as well, because I'm quite into the flight simulators, taking away the numeric keypad made it difficult sometimes for the outside views and stuff.
Yeah, and I remember Deluxe Paint actually needed that for a few of the 3D perspective kind of things as well, didn't it? So I wasn't a big flight sim player, so it wouldn't have ever really affected me, but I do remember people... It always baffled me a bit why, like now you get a laptop and you got like a function button. Why they didn't just like implement something like that on it. That would have seemed like quite an easy fix. But yeah, when using my 600 today, I mean, apart from occasionally, I remember in the early days of WHD load, you'd often have to press like an asterisk key on the numpad or something, and the 600 hasn't got one, and like some of them wouldn't work. It was a minor inconvenience, but I think you remember how big an Amiga 500 with like an external hard disk and everything was on your desk.
Yeah.
Having the 600, like, quarter of the size, it was, a much more compact and I think, a nicer looking machine in hindsight.
Yeah, definitely, because obviously with the massive modulator at the back, you used to have the computer just about fit on your desk hanging over the edge because you didn't want to push the button in at the back with the modulator on it and damage it. I remember it well.
I forgot about that horrible modulator, yeah. I remember that was the first thing that broke actually on my A500 Plus. I remember taking it back to Dixon's about a month after we got it because it started flickering everywhere. Horrible thing.
I just wonder what they were thinking, because I'm thinking, oh yeah, that's quite a nice design. I know, we'll stick a massive brick on the back so it has to be 6 foot away from the wall.
And they included it with every Amiga 500 as well, so surely it would have been cheaper just inside the machine, you think. There's plenty of room in there, but yeah, God knows.
Yeah, it's who knows.
Yeah.
So from the A500, did you move on to the A1200 then, or did you take a different route?
Yeah, so I got my 1200. It was not long before Commodore went under. I think it would have been around Christmas '93. I got that, so quite near the end of Commodore's life. So yeah, the 1200. Then I got some CD32s as well. Dolly, I got 2 CD32s in probably would have been '95. I got those. So my A1200, that was my main machine, and I kept that as my main machine until 2001. It was my A1200. Yeah, so quite a long time. And then, so I was into DJing and stuff, and I wanted a couple of audio CD players for my DJ setup. And I went into a local computer shop, and I think it was like summer '95, and obviously the PlayStation was out by then, and they were selling off CD32s for about 25 quid each. So they're actually cheaper than buying some dedicated CD players, and I thought, I'll just buy 2 of them. So I've actually still got them to this day. And they go for a lot more now, obviously, so it was a good buy.
That's crazy, because they go in now for literally £300 to £400. And the box ones are even going for even more. So...
Yeah, I mean, yeah, at least the price of the one new, if not more. So yeah, they were actually quite a bargain. It's a friend of mine, Joe, I do my podcast with. He's wanting one at the moment. Every time he's around, he's like, hi, no, do you really need 2 of them? I'm like, well, I've had them since I was a kid. I don't want to get rid of them. Never know, I might need 2 one day.
I'll give you a £5 for one. That's a deal.
Yeah. But even then, I remember like playing, because the games that came out on the 1200, there weren't massive improvements over 500 versions, but I think just having that 020 in there, having the AGA chipset, it just did feel like a much more responsive machine. And I think I had like an 18 meg hard disk inside mine, so that was like the first hard disk that I had that felt like I'm never going to fill all that 18 megabytes. Glenn's got Monkey Island 2.
yeah, exactly. 12 discs later. I'm surprised with you being obviously into your music and DJ, you didn't go down the Atari ST route, because obviously that's where with the MIDI and everything on it.
Yeah, I mean, I think again, it's just kind of what your friends had at school as well. I mean, everyone at my school around then was like Amiga users. We knew one kid at school who had an Atari ST, but no one talked to him. But yeah, I mean, it always just felt. I mean, I've got an ST now. I've got an STE, and I think for what it is, I mean, it's essentially like a Motorola 68K on a stick, really, isn't it? With obviously got your MIDI ports on there that you could add to the Amiga for like a tenner. It wasn't much to get a parallel one. But yeah, the operating system and stuff. Again, it was all just off the shelf kind of stuff that they bought, and it does its job all right. But why would you have that when you could have had an Amiga?
Did you do much? Did you make many like the mod music using Octamed and Med on the Amiga?
I used to try. I was never very good at it though. So I remember because we got the Amiga 500 CD-ROM drive, the A570. That you plug into the side carriage of it, and it would turn it into a CD TV. So I think they brought those out around the same time. Weirdly, the Amiga 500 was discontinued. They released a CD-ROM drive for it that wouldn't work with the Amiga 600 that had just come out. So marketing genius there. And then it failed abysmally, the CD TV, and I think it was Silica. They were selling them off for about £99. I got one of those for Christmas '92 from memory. And the only reason my friend Ricky had a CD TV, and I thought they were pretty cool. And often I'd loan him my Amiga 500, and I'd use his CD TV for a couple of weeks. We'd kind of swap over. And I thought it was great being able to play Lemmings and listen to now 20 or whatever was out there on the CD player at the same time. I thought it was pretty cool. And it looked great, being like that sleek kind of black hi-fi looking system. And, I've got one today, actually. But then when I got the A570, it came with a CD PD disc with all the Fred Fish library on there. Yeah, I don't know if you remember those. And it had like a massive mod archive on there as well of about like 1,000 mods. And Pro Tracker was on there. So I'd load them all in and just try and, dissect how they were all made and move samples between them and, swap them around a bit. I was never very good at it, but I did find it interesting.
It's funny you should say that, because straight away, I never had a A570, but I used to like drool in the magazines looking at the PD CDs that had got all the library on, but you had to like buy just one disc at a time, and I'm thinking that'd be amazing. But I never had one, unfortunately. I'm gonna follow you around because you seem to get all the bargains.
Yeah, that's it. I got lucky back then. Not so much today, unfortunately. But yeah, I mean, it was great. You remember back then looking in like magazine adverts. I remember sending off for some PD discs, and it'd be like about £5. You'd have to get your mum to write you a check or get a postal order, and by the time you paid for the floppy disk and the postage, £5 a disc. And if you could get the entire library, I've got like the Team 17, whatever they were originally, 17-bit software. I've got like their demo collection down here as well. On Almost, I used to put them all out. So I had a load of those back then that, you could pick them up for about 20 quid. Yeah. And, you've got about 800 quid's worth of discs on it. It was like, yeah, amazing back then. Especially before you got the internet, it was like, I could explore it for months. Yeah.
Well, it's funny because I've got the same, the black ones with the CD PD into it. I've got the set over there, but I haven't actually got a CD player. I bought them just so I could use them on WinUAE. But just to say, I actually had them because I always wanted them. That nostalgia thing, I suppose. But I to be honest, I did like my 1200, but I was a bit disappointed because my friend at the time bought a PC 486 SX25, and I always remember the game 4D Sports Driving on that. Right. And on the 1200, obviously, it played, but it wasn't that smooth. But on his, it was like smooth as anything. So I was a bit gutted at that point.
Yeah, it's weird though, because PCs suddenly just came on leaps and bounds in those, like from about 92 to about 95, didn't they? Those 3 years. Because I remember when I got my A500 Plus, my friend Mandip at school, his dad had like an Amstrad PC, and I think it was like a 286, and him bragging about how great it was, and we went round, and I was like, he didn't have a sound card. It was a built-in PC bleeper. And then he came around mine, and he heard the theme tune to Lotus 2.
Oh, right,
his jaw dropped. He was like, I didn't know computers could do music like that, So it felt like the Amiga was so far in front of what the PC could do until I remember seeing Wolfenstein, thinking, "Oh, that looks pretty good." When Doom came out, it was like, "Oh yeah, okay." I remember all my mates that were into the Amiga were like nagging the parents for a PC to play Doom.
Yeah, it's like you say, it slowly crept up on the inside and then just. I think the big things were, like you say, the sound card coming into it, and you got the VGA graphics, which are 256 colours. But then when the 3D cards came in, that was it. It became a viable games machine, I think.
Yeah, and so you remember even goes back then as well. So I actually collect for the Atari Jaguar, which is like, obviously a failed, pretty naff machine. But I've always liked the underdogs, I always found them quite interesting. But I remember then, 3DO coming out and Sega Saturn being on the horizon, obviously PlayStation coming along and CD32 was out there. All in those 2 or 3 years, it was quite a confusing time to be a gamer, and you didn't know which horse to back really because there's that many different choices. Not like today where you've got 3 consoles and that's it.
Yeah, it's funny you should say about Jaguar because I did a stream probably about 2 weeks ago. I've been doing a stream where I look at it's only through emulation, but systems I'd never played before, and I'd never played the Jaguar. Katsumi Ninja, what is that all about?
Yeah, a pretty naff Mortal Kombat clone, isn't it? On the Jag. Weirdly, I was watching. Because we had Dominic Diamond on our podcast, and I kind of got into after that just binge watching all the Games Master episodes again on YouTube. And in one of them, I think it's in Series 3, they actually review Kasumi Ninja, and they give it a really good score, saying it's like a Mortal Kombat beta or something. They were saying, I was like, yeah, it's obviously I think I was just Atari cheaping out on not actually licensing the official thing or not being able to. But yeah, again, it's kind of like a B movie version of Mortal Kombat, isn't it? It's like really naff. And you've obviously got the Scottish character who shoots a fireball out of an area under his kilt.
I was literally crying with laughter because I'd never seen it before, and I'm like, if this could, they'd obviously took the most stereotypical Scotsman they could ever think of, and then just to add a bit more, we'll make him fire fireballs from under his kilt.
Yeah, I mean, cause my missus is she's actually really good on beat 'em up games. It's about the only form of video game she's any good at. Always kicks my ass on them, so I thought I'll sit her down with that. And, she even beat me on that game, so
yeah, I'll give up on beat 'em ups.
That's one thing I like about that's one thing I like about the Jag, because there are a lot of games on that system that you don't get anywhere else, and even if they are terrible, it's still something that I think it's good to experience it. Not many people have.
Yeah, but that's exactly why I'm playing them, because, like you say, you hear bad things about things, but until you've tried it yourself, I don't think you can comment. And I remember the Jags, a bit like yourself with the CD32s. I remember them being on sale in Dixon's for £39 when they were trying to get rid of them. Yeah,
I think the biggest one I missed out on is do you remember they made the Commodore 64 into a console?
Yes.
Yeah, that I think my local Tandy was selling them off in around 1994 for £20 each, and they had a stack of them near the tills, probably about 50 of them, £20 each clearance. I remember saying to my dad, "Oh, we should get one of those." And my brother already had a C64. He goes, "Doesn't Nick already have one of them?" I'm like, "Oh, yeah, there's no point." Now I think they go for about £400 or £500.
I'm going to say, hindsight is a wonderful thing. If you can invent a time machine, we'll go back and we'll buy them all. Because sorry.
Stop my DeLorean up with them.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, because it's like I was talking to my friends about this. It's anything now that isn't a bit like the Wii U. I think that isn't a massive mainstream hit. I think that's going to be the consoles that are going to be worth something in the future.
Yeah, I mean, I've got mates who've bought Wii U's actually and kept them boxed in their attic, hoping that it's going to be a bit of a gold mine in 20 years, which it might well be. I think when you're in the middle of something, you don't really appreciate kind of what it's going to be worth in the future, do you? No. It is weird, and I often think now, will stuff like the Wii U and the 360, if you got a box 360, will that be kind of nostalgic in 10, 20 years, the same way the Mega Drive and that is now? But I mean, I was watching, Modern Vintage Gamer. Yeah. Demetrius did a video, or weirdly a video that I was trying to do, but I couldn't get hold of one, about the Xbox 360 Blades interface. And I saw that's been everywhere today. I think, Kotaku and websites like that have picked it up as news and embedded this video, and it's been all over my Facebook timeline and Twitter today. So I think people are already getting nostalgic for it. So I think you're right. I think, it probably would be worth just buying, if you're going to get like, a PlayStation 5, buy two of them, keep one box in your attic.
You'd be looking to get one these days.
You're right, yeah.
At the moment. It's that interesting thing as well that because I don't know how, do you play modern games? Are you into modern games or?
Yeah, I like them. Don't get a lot of time to play them, unfortunately. I got Red Dead Redemption 2 for Christmas in 2019. Finally played it about 2 weeks ago. So it's been the shrink wrap for about 2 years. Normally, the weekends I'll play a bit of Call of Duty or something with my brother while we have a chat, or a bit of Forza, something like that, 2-player games, or we'll dig out, Golden Axe and play that on Xbox Live, or we're quite into adventure games as well. So I play the Life is Strange, and if you played that, that was a really good adventure game. And there's a lot of kind of the Telltale games. I quite enjoy those kind of adventure games that I can put on the TV in the living room. And my missus is not a big gamer. She can sit there and watch it like a movie while she's working on something, reading a magazine or something. So they're quite nice to have it in the background. Generally, if I've got a spare half an hour or something, I've got a Nintendo Switch, which is really probably the system that I'll pick up the most. A quick half an hour on Mario Kart or something. Just because when I turn on my Xbox One I've got behind me, if I haven't played it for a week, when I have a game on a Friday night, it'll be a 30 gigabyte update before I can get into the game. So, I was just going to say, it's annoying because I think I'm at the stage now where I have to keep deleting games on my SSD just to fit updates in. It's like, I think I might as well just put it on my PC for the amount of space and updates I've got to wait for all the time.
Yeah, and I think it spoils that pick up and play because, like you say, you turn it on and then you're thinking, 20 gig update, that's going to take at least half an hour at the most, the least, you know what I mean? And then by the time it's finished, you're not interested in it anymore.
Yeah, and I think, often see on Facebook, like, kids today wouldn't wait, 20 minutes for a Spectrum game to load. I'm like, you'd be lucky if it took 20 minutes to do a 30 gig update. Yeah, it's worse than ever now. It's weird because that was kind of the appeal of console gaming, though, wasn't it? Console gaming was that you didn't have all the messing around that you do with a PC. Obviously, you haven't got to install graphics drivers and all that kind of stuff, but it's getting the stage now with installing and having to do updates. There's not really that much between them, I don't think.
And I think as well, it's beginning to make gamers a bit not gamers, but software companies a bit lazy because when you've got infinite amounts of power and graphics and memory, you don't. Like the old school, they put effort in to try and make them fit into like the 64K or the 512K. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and also one thing, we saw it with like Cyberpunk 2077. It's like putting out games that are buggy and not finished. We'll patch it when it comes out. I think there's been a lot of companies guilty of that just to hit deadlines. Which when you've paid all that money for a game, it's really annoying.
Well, the Cyberpunk, I think that patch was actually a whole new game that had been rewritten, and they just said it was a patch.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, so it's like, just to hit deadlines, but then you're spending all that time installing them, and obviously when you get a new game, you're excited and want to play it there and then when you have a bad experience with it just kind of sours it a bit, I think. But that's why the Switch, to me, it kind of reminds me more of the old school systems. You've even got games on cart, and even if they do have updates, are very small on the Switch. I mean, they're generally downloaded in like 2 or 3 minutes.
Yeah, definitely. They're quick to download, aren't they? So, where do you see the future of gaming going? Because another interesting point is that obviously consoles of today at some point are going to become retro, just by the nature of things moving on. Where do you see that going?
Yeah, I mean, that's something we've kind of thought about quite a bit, kind of what's going to be the retro of the future, as it were. Because, new retros coming along all the time. I saw that, Retro Gamer magazine had the PlayStation 2 on their cover a couple of months ago. And they got quite a backlash, actually, on Twitter. I saw people whinging the PS2 is not retro, but then it came out, 21 years ago now?
Yeah.
Yeah. And you think 21 years before that? Yeah, well, 21 years before that, the Atari 2600 came out. And that was definitely considered retro in 2001. So, new retro is coming along all the time. And that's kind of, with our podcast, we're kind of moving into the PS2, original Xbox and GameCube era. But I do wonder where it's kind of going to end. Because obviously now, I know the current systems have still got optical drives on them. you can still go into Game or HMV when they're open again and pick up discs. But I think when they eventually go, which is inevitable, that it's going to become all digital eventually, like the music industry and like movies are now.
Yeah.
So whether it's going to be, and kind of looking at services as well. I know obviously Google Stadia didn't really take off all that well, but I think with stuff like Xbox Game Pass, that kind of does seem to be where it's going now. That kind of subscription model where you almost rent a game really for a flat rate. I can see that becoming a lot more prevalent in the future. But obviously then you get the downside that you don't own the games anymore. So when the servers go off, you lose them. So will there be retro in 20 years for this generation? Will even be able to play any of the games anymore? I think probably because of piracy. I imagine there'll be like, websites and emulators, you can probably emulate a PS5 in 20 years and get, a massive Blu-ray image off like, archive.org or something, I imagine. That's probably going to be the only way it'll be preserved, though.
Yeah, definitely. It's funny because I love archive.org. It's probably one of my favourite websites, not just for getting software, but for looking at old magazines and everything. And perhaps that's, like you say, that's where it will go.
Yeah, and I think, even talking to, we actually did a documentary for the BBC last year about video game preservation. And we chatted to loads of people, a guy called Frank Cifaldi, his name is, he runs the Video Game Heritage Society in America. And they were, they're essentially set up to preserve video games for the future, and they've made some massive efforts. And he was kind of saying the same, that, piracy has been a big savior or preservation of games, that because a lot of these companies kind of don't exist anymore. They're bought out by other companies who either don't care or they don't know that they own the assets, or the original source code's been lost along the way. And we've even had stories of like, commercial emulation packages coming out, like collections of old games that have actually used the pirated versions just because they didn't have them anymore. So I think piracy is always going to be a massive bonus to preserving software in the future.
And that's the irony of it, isn't it, I suppose, that they're the saviour of the game. I know, I think it was... like you say, somebody looked into the actual code, didn't they, of one of the games that was on the virtual console store or whatever it's called, and it had got the headers from the emulation. So yeah, it's right. And you look at even all the Amiga stuff. The WHG low packs have all got the Skid Row and the Fairlight kind of trainers on the front of them and everything, haven't they? So they're all out there. Yeah, definitely. I used to love the music on the intros on those.
And even today, you look at those, how they can fit all that. I mean, some of them crack throws are like 1K. They have a mod file that have scrolling graphics. They were some of the best programmers on the Amiga, the pirates.
Definitely. And it's quite funny because when people came to buy the Amigas, they'd buy the Amiga pack, they'd buy the 512K RAM expansion and a pack of 10 discs. I could guarantee every time that's what they would buy.
Yeah, I think our local shop, they used to sell like their floppy disks for 10p each. You could buy, and they had a massive roll of stickers. You could put on the disc for a penny each, and you go in, you'd be like, £5 worth of discs and pounds worth of stickers, please. And then you'd be in the playground on Monday morning, just swapping between friends and X-copy sessions at your friend's house after school.
Yeah, X-copy that Boeing at end when it had finished. You were just hoping they were all zeros and there were no ones.
Yeah. It's funny because there is, I don't know if you've seen these on YouTube. There's footage of like old Amiga parties. In places like Poland and Norway, and some guys gone around with a video camera. There's actually one in Wakefield, I think it was, and you listen in the background, you can just hear the X-copy boing every half a second all throughout the video all day long,
like a massive boing 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 boing.
Yeah, it's like echoing around the room.
Yeah, but the thing is, I do miss those days. It was just so much more, I don't know, easy to get hold of things and do things. And it's like with the computers, you could turn it on and the world was your oyster. You could either do graphics, music, gaming, whatever you want. Nowadays, I think it's very sterile, if I'm honest, with the Xboxes and stuff. I get people like them, but I don't know what your thoughts are on that.
Yeah, I mean, we were actually having a chat recently. We did like an interview, and someone asked us about kind of whether kids today, where kind of the programmers of the future and all that are coming from. So now at school now, they're actually starting to teach programming again, which is quite cool. Because it was a long time when, probably when you were at school as well, same as me, it kind of went from learning how to program the BBC Micro into IT. By the end of school, I was learning, Word on Windows 95 and stuff like that. Yeah. So it was a big change in that, mid 80s to mid 90s. And then I think, learning actual computers was kind of off the school curriculum for about 15 years, and he brought it back in the last 5 years or so. And I think, I often hear people going, oh, kids are so tech literate today, but then in many ways I don't think they are, because it's become an appliance now. When you turned on a Commodore 64 or Spectrum, you had to do at least a little bit of programming to get your games to load, to type something into BASIC, a command at least. And we all knew, 10 print, a swear word, 20 go to 10. Every kid knew that.
And leave it running in Dixon's.
Always used to do it every Saturday. So there was that kind of, when you turn the machines on back then, it encouraged you to learn it because it was there in front of your face.
Yeah.
Whereas now, you turn on a machine, dumped into Windows or Mac OS, and the stuff of the underlying elements of it are hidden away unless you want to find them. But again, I think stuff like the Raspberry Pi and the fact that that encourages programming, and the amount of those have sold is really encouraging. I think there'll always be kids, especially with how big gaming is now. There's always going to be the kids like I was, the kid that I used to take the video recorder apart to see how it worked. Couldn't get it back together again after. But there'll always be the kids with inquisitive minds who want to know how it works, how do I do it? And the fact that gaming's so big now, how do I get in and make my own games? And I think, in a way now, that's probably easier than it's ever been, because, you can do an entire programming course on YouTube for free. It's all out there, the information, if they want to find it. So in many ways, I don't worry that it'll kind of dry up. If anything, I think there'll be more people into it.
It's quite ironic, though, that I think that we're very tech literate nowadays. Obviously, everything. Yet there's no programs on television at all to do with programming, to do with gaming. No, nothing. And you would have thought we would have evolved to have more of those.
Yeah, it's even like video games. I know. Saying Games Master's coming back. I keep seeing that Channel 4 are rebooting it, apparently. I haven't got high hopes for it being any good, if I'm honest. But the fact that video games today, like the biggest form of entertainment media in the world, bigger than Hollywood, but the fact that there's no real coverage on mainstream TV seems insane. They'll dedicate a whole Saturday afternoon to football, but, imagine Grand Theft Auto 5 probably earn more than, the average football team in a year. I'm not into football in the slightest, so could be wrong there, but I know that video game launches now are bigger than movies, and it's bigger than the music industry, but there's no representation really on mainstream media at all.
It baffles me, because, like you say, it's totally just weird. It's I'm a bit like you with the revamp of or relaunch of Games Master, if it's true. I think the problem you're going to have is you'll have the old school people like us who remember the original, and then they will constantly be trying to compare the two, and I don't think it'll be the same, because gaming's moved on. There's esports, and there's a lot of other things happen now with gaming, and I think it'd be good if they did two versions, one version that's for youngsters and one version that's like all the old retro consoles or the old YouTubers versing each other. I think they should do that.
Yeah, I think they're trying to, from what I've read, they're going to do kind of classic gaming and modern gaming in obviously the same kind of episode. So yeah, a lot of people kind of think it's going to be a bit like Go 8-Bit, which Go 8-Bit had its moments, but it wasn't like Games Master, And I think you're right. When you're using a brand with that much history and that meant that much to gamers of our age, it's you've got a big ass there. People are going to tear it to bits if it's not what they remember, which is obviously not going to be, because gaming's changed now. So
yeah, it was just the grittiness of it at the time as well. Even down to the fact the first episode was set in a church, and it reminded me of the clubs at the time, because a lot of clubs at that time were being put into old YMCAs and churches and stuff, just for that gothic type feeling.
Yeah, you're right, absolutely. And I think, I've heard rumours that, Patrick Stewart's going to be the Games Master, apparently, which I think could work. I think, obviously having another Sir Patrick would be great. But then who are you going to get to replace Dominic? When we interviewed Dominic, he did say that he was going to be moving back to the UK.
Was that a clue?
If he was back on it, yeah, I think he wanted to come back to be closer to his mum, he said. But I imagine he'll be looking for a job if he's moved back here. So I think that will give them a lot of kind of brownie points if Dom was back on it. For like us who remember the original show, that might win quite a lot of us over, I think. So
yeah,
I have to see.
Whether a golden joystick these days would cut it with the kids, I'm not sure, but
yeah, golden Xbox pad doesn't quite have the same appeal. I don't think quite got the same ring.
No, definitely not. So obviously you're into music as well. Again, I think you've touched on it already about the sort of evolution of music. I found that obviously when you've got a CD, you actually listen to it all. If you've got an album, how do you feel about nowadays, like with the advent of streaming and MP3s, where you literally can get 1,000 songs, and do you really listen to that quality of the other tracks that you wouldn't normally listen to?
Yeah, you're totally right there. I mean, I remember going out. It was a big part of our Saturdays going CD and vinyl shopping. You know, me and my mates. I think we had about 6 or 7 record shops. Obviously, had your hour prices and your Virgin Mega stores, places like that we go to, but also independent record shops. We had a few of those as well that we go to every weekend, and it kind of felt like I'd hear a song on the radio, or on the Essential Mix on Radio 1, and I'd listen to that before I was old enough to go out and write down the names of the songs when they said them, and then got my record shop out, have you got this in? And they'd be like, it's not out for another 2 or 3 weeks, or we can get it on import from like France or America for 25, 30 quid for a single. I'd be like, God, okay. Which I did actually buy a few of those, saved up for weeks for them. But it always felt like there's that part of the chase, waiting for things to come out, and then when you finally saw it on a store shelf, it was like, wow, or it was, you get something, and because you got like 3 or 4 CD singles that week, you'd listen to them just on repeat because that's all you had that week, until like you went CD shopping again Saturday. And even albums and stuff as well, you'd listen to the entire thing, put it on, listen like start to finish, because you want, I think, God, what were CDs back then? About 18 quid, weren't they, in like the mid-90s?
Yeah.
So you'd want to get your value for money by listening to everything on there. I do agree, it's become a lot more disposable today. And in many ways, I think the age of the album's kind of gone now, because everything's kind of, Spotify, you can kind of cherry pick what you want to hear. And even before that, when you're buying music off iTunes and stuff, people would often just buy, rather than getting an entire album, they'll buy 2 or 3 songs that they liked off it, rather than the entire thing. Even CD singles, I remember, the average length of a single in the late 80s, early 90s was about 3.5 minutes. Now they're about 2 minutes 20, 2 minutes 30, just because attention spans are a lot shorter now, I imagine, or there's more choice out there. I don't know, but I've noticed that they're definitely getting shorter. And the stuff we play on the radio, which is mainstream music, a lot of the recent songs, especially like dance music songs, they're all like 2 minutes 30, 2 minutes 40 at most.
You can't imagine that for a dance song either, because obviously, like you say, they used to be 3 to 4 minutes, and then you'd get the 12-inch mix, which were about 7 minutes long, and then you'd get lots of remixes by loads of different people on the same CD, wouldn't you?
Yeah, and I remember I was quite gutted when, I think it was around maybe about 99, 2000, they brought in a rule. CD couldn't get in the charts if it had more than 3 tracks on it.
Really?
And then I remember, because before that, you would get CD singles, wouldn't you, with about 10 tracks on it, all of different remixes.
Yeah.
And, for someone that was getting into DJing, I love that, because you'd have all your different mixes that you could play. And then they started bringing out, you get 3 different CD singles with all the different mixes on. You'd have to buy them 3 times over if you wanted them all. So that was a bit annoying when they brought that rule in. But I do remember the year 2000, when I'd first gone to uni, we had a multimedia suite. So I did new media production, it was called, which sounds hideously dated, that term there. New
retro media production now.
Yeah, that's what it is now, yeah. Then I had to make websites in Dreamweaver and things. We had a suite full of iMac G3s and iMac G4s. And it was open till like midnight, and no one would use it after about like 4 or 5 p.m. And I lived on campus, so I'd go in there on the evening, or on weekends, on Saturdays. I could go in there on a Saturday afternoon, but the only one in there. So I remember having probably about 20 or 30 Macs, all with Napster running, downloading tracks, and they all had CD writers in them. So that was a big change for me when I discovered Napster.
Napster, the beginning of it, the beginning of the end. That's what started all the streaming.
Isn't it? That's really, that kind of kicked record companies into the millennium, because they wanted to sell CDs for 15 quid. They didn't want you to be able to get the music for free, and I think they were happy with their model. But I remember, I think the music industry has only recently started to kind of turn around the loss in profits they were making. Every year from 2000 to 2015, it was going down. And then, I imagine the last 12 months, obviously, we're not having concerts and tours and that kind of thing's probably damaged them a lot as well, but they were kind of turning things around again in terms of licenses with streaming platforms and YouTube and that kind of thing, and Vivo. But it really took something like Napster to come along to really give them that kick that look, people are going to nick it unless you give them a way to buy it legally.
Yeah, and make it easier for them to do it, I suppose. It's like you say as well that I remember going to nightclubs in Chesterfield again where I live, and you'd have like groups on like N-Trance and stuff that was in the charts that nowadays you would never get. These big groups just doing a random nightclub in a small town, would you? You know what I mean?
Yeah, we used to get it when we did. So we used to do nights around Leeds, and we did Lincoln and Cleethorpes and Bradford. We used to do all over like club nights, and we get acts who were in the charts back then. Like we used to do UK Garage Night, and do you remember like Hi Piper? Do you really like it? Is it wicked? Loving it. Like we had them come and do a set with us, and we had like the dream team of Radio 1 used to come. We used to book them all the time, and DJ Z and people like that. And Sweet Female Attitude did Flowers. They did like a PA Mystique. We had them at one of our nights as well. But because they're all British acts, it was obviously a lot easier to book them than to get like Beyonce over to play Ritzies in Lincoln.
Yeah, play Cleethorpes live.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
That would be worth seeing. One of the other things that made me chuckle as well, because I believe he used to work, was it for EMAP Group a few years ago? One of the radio stations they cover, I think, is Radio Hallam, which obviously is close to where we live. And Radio Hallam just reminds me of being a child when it snowed, hoping that they read your school out was closed. You know, they used to read the schools out.
Yeah.
And they never did. It was always
long lists, didn't they?
Yeah.
Yeah, and it was like, you listen, we'll do some more after the break and play some adverts, another 5 minutes worth of lists. Yeah, it's weird because the radio station I work on now, I mean, about 5 years ago, we used to put all the school closures on our website, because I do website management for them as well, so it'd be my job to get up at 4 a.m, check all the the council sites and messages we'd had overnight and update them all on the website and keep them, they keep coming in. And we used to get 40,000-50,000 people at one time on the website. This is like 2015, looking at it, but I think that kind of age of radio's changed now that schools can just kind of text all the parents if they're closed now or something, so it's not a service that's required as much anymore as it used to be. But you're definitely right. I mean, even just hearing the name of your school on the radio made it feel you felt like, oh, we're famous.
Yeah. And then when they didn't read it, you were like, oh no, they've got it wrong, they've got it wrong.
Yeah. Or you'd ring up, that school's closed.
Yeah, it's Mr. So-and-so. So just going back to your YouTube channel, so what got you into YouTube at the beginning? Was it what attracted you to it?
Yeah, well, I used to I don't know if you've heard of a guy called Chris Perillo. He was an American TV presenter on Tech TV. He used to be on over there, and I remember. So I got into kind of watching live streams. There was obviously Jenny Cam in the late 90s. Do you remember her? Yeah. And then we had Justin TV, and Justin was a guy who used to walk around the camera strapped to his head. This is probably around 2004-05. And I got into watching a lot of live streams that have them on. And then Chris Perillo popped up on Ustream. And I used to watch him. He used to have a live stream in his office. It was on 24 hours a day. You could just dip in any other day it'd be on. It was like documentaries like We Live in Public. And if you ever saw that back in the early 2000s, again, where it was like an experiment where it was kind of like, Big Brother before Big Brother on the web. And I remember interacting with Chris's community quite a bit in around 2006-07. And hanging out in his IRC channel, really got ingrained into that community, and he made me a moderator. And then eventually I started doing some videos for him. So he knew that I was into the Amiga, and I think he got a copy. He got like maybe a copy of Amiga Forever or something, and he sent it to me and said, "Oh, do you want to do a review on my channel?" So I did that, and I did a couple of games reviews as well. I think like Call of Duty 4 or something on his channel that it might still be out there somewhere, but looking back, they're probably cringeworthy now. But they were kind of the first time I'd done videos. I was always into video production as a kid. Actually, at school, we used to enter video and film competitions with the school. We had like a video club when I was in like secondary school, and we'd make like little documentaries and little stupid films that we put in to award shows. And we'd go to competitions at school award shows all around the country. So I've always been kind of into video. I used to do all the titling on my Amiga 500, using a scroller, I think it was called, where you could get like the credit effects and things. Then a mate of mine had a Genlock, and that was like, wow, we can put it over, like do like lower thirds and stuff now.
Yeah.
So I always had an interest in video, but then when Chris asked me to do some stuff for his channel, and I got a good reaction from doing it. I remember thinking there wasn't really that much about the Amiga on YouTube back then. And I think I did my first video around 2007. My first video was actually about Linux, weirdly. And then I did one. These are videos that are set to private now that I never want anyone to see again. It's terrible.
That's cheating.
Oh, yeah. No one will see these. And then I did a review of the aluminium MacBooks when they came out around 2008. And then I did some about the Amiga. And they actually got a really good reaction. I did some about Amiga OS 4, like kind of the next generation Amiga stuff that I was quite into then. Because actually I got rid of apart from my CD32s, I got rid of all my Amigas. And I went away to uni.
Blasphemy.
Yeah, well, I took my Amiga 1200 to uni with me. So my mother, she looked at it and she's like, I was going away to uni 2000. You can't bring that with you. That thing is a mess. The top of the case was off. I had like an IDE cable snaking out the side with an external CD-ROM drive that had its own power pack that wasn't in a case. And, I didn't even have the lid on because you couldn't put it on. It was a proper Frankenstein's machine. And she said, I'm going to buy you a PC, so you can't take that away to university. It's a mess. She got me a Windows 98 PC. But then I networked my Amiga and used it as a slave storage for my A1200. Took them away to uni, but then really got into DJing and everything. And I remember after first year, I took the Amigas back home, put them in my parents' attic, left them there for a couple of years, and they're having a clean out. And my mum's like, "Do you want this?" I'm like, "Oh no." This is around 2005. All went in the bin. 2 or 3 Amiga 500s, 2 Amiga 1200s.
I'm not listening.
I look back at it now. I'm like, "Oh my god, what was I thinking?" And then I ended up buying I remember I got an Amiga 600 actually because I got a bit nostalgic for it. The game I wanted, I can't for the life of me remember what it was, but I remember seeing. I think I've been out one night, DJing probably, got back 2 or 3 in the morning on eBay, probably around 2005-06. Looked up Amiga games. I thought there was a game I remember had a really cool box. It might have been Loom actually. I remember looking at it and thinking I wouldn't mind that just to put on a shelf because it looks cool, as a piece of art. Bought it and the guy's like, "Oh, I've got the computer as well if you want it." So I got Loom, I think it was, and an Amiga 600 for £5. Give me the computer for free. And that kind of got me back into, I wonder if I can get some discs written for this thing again. And then I got an Amiga 1200 off eBay around 2008. And then that kind of, snowballed to this ridiculous collection I've got today. So it was really just a case of I've got these things. Those early videos kind of got some traction behind them. And there wasn't really many other people doing Amiga stuff, on YouTube. Steve Benway, knows in your channel here. Yeah. And he was like, one of the early YouTubers I used to watch quite a lot. One of the only other people I saw doing Amiga stuff. So, always been a big fan of Steve. That's really where it started, really, just, putting these videos out there and then being surprised that actually people are interested in this stuff. So I'll do a few more.
They are. They're really, especially into the Amiga, they're really interesting to watch. I was chuckling. I watched the one that you did about the Competition Pro. And you look so young then. I don't know if that was one of your first videos.
Yeah. Yeah, God, that'd have been 11 years ago, I think now. Yeah. When I was a lot younger and a lot thinner.
I don't know what. We're all there, aren't we? Did you ever think that, 10 years later, because I think you've had something like 11.1 million views on your channel, which is amazing.
Right. Well, I didn't know that. That's impressive.
Yeah, I was going to say, did you ever think at that point you would get that many, or?
Oh God, no! I mean, them early videos I did, I think one of them got 100 views, and I was like, "Wow!" 100 people watch this. That's great. In the first video, I've got a couple on my channel that are over 1 million now, which I didn't actually realize till I looked back, a few months later. But no, it's crazy. I mean, so there are people that have come along, obviously, in the time that I've been doing YouTube who've taken it a lot more seriously than me, put a lot more effort in than I have, and have got much bigger channels and are reaping the rewards out of it, which, more power to them. I think that's amazing. But it's always been something I went through a stage of maybe doing a video a month and leaving it 2 or 3 months, which if you want to get traction on YouTube, you've got to be regular with content. And it's still something I'm guilty of now. I mean, I try and do more videos these days, but I've got about 3 I'm working on at the moment. But my last upload was 3 weeks ago. And now that I've got sponsors who get a bit naggy, where's the video that you promised us? So I'm like, I'll be out this week. Yeah. So that is a bit of kind of pressure on, when you've got people paying for spots in your videos, that gives you, kick up the arse to do them. But yeah, I mean, I never thought the channel would be anywhere near as popular as it is now. And really, it's something that, I never took it for granted, really. And, whenever I get a video that gets, decent numbers on it, I'm always like, oh, wow, okay. So it's always hard to tell what people are going to be into on YouTube. Some videos I'll do, I'll think this is going to be massive and it'll get 3,000 views, which is small for my channel. And then other ones I'll, think, oh, I want to get something out, so let's do a quick video on this. And then I look and it's got 256,000 views or something. It's so hard to tell, isn't it? But I think, the channel's evolved quite a lot. I'm trying to do a bit more effort on make my production values a bit nicer now. I've got stuff like a nicer camera and lighting and that kind of stuff that I didn't have originally, and kind of making them a bit more. I've done videos recently that are a bit more scripted, so actually I'll do some bits of the video kind of free flow, but other bits I'll bullet point and do it as a voiceover, so you're kind of getting stuff out there that's a bit more compact, and it's not I'm not waffling away like I am now in videos too much.
It's fine because that is the whole point of my channel. I'm never going to be one of the big making money YouTubers. I'm not professional enough with what I do, but I just like talking and listening and watching people who have got that same interest. I met Steve Benway 11 years ago when we natter all the time, and that's what I enjoy. But that's what I like about YouTube, that being able to bring people together who've got the same interests. I enjoyed the video you did about the online OSs that you can access via your web browser. That I actually went on to archive and looked at the Mac one that you talked about. So, yeah, keep on doing it because I really enjoy watching it.
Oh, thank you very much. Yeah, I'm really into the operating system stuff at the moment. Seems to be kind of where I'm, going right now. I kind of go through stages of having, big interest in certain things, and it's always difficult on YouTube because, especially when, like I said, my channel was kind of known for Amiga stuff, and I've still got an audience there that if I'm not covering the Amiga, they get a bit pissy and they're like, this is not Amigas. But when you get new people in who, you've got to think, I looked at my stats the other day, and actually, America is my biggest audience now. It used to be the UK, but I've got more viewers in America now than I have over here. And it's always weird seeing stats and stuff like that. Like our podcast recently, we've had a massive growth over the last year in 18 to 24-year-olds. That's like our second biggest audience now, which is like, these are people that, the stuff we talk about, their parents probably were barely alive for. It's crazy. So I think in a way that it's kind of nice when I get messages like I got one the other week. Some kid is like, as a teenager, who goes, oh, I've heard about the Amiga. It looks really good. What do I need to get one? What would you recommend? Which one do I buy? So I think there is definitely an audience out there that, not that it's my aim to educate them, but show them stuff that's neat that they might not have known about before. I'm quite into doing that.
And I think it's a way of preserving the hobby, because getting the youngsters interested in it will preserve it for longer than because at some point we're all going to, generation's going to go into it, and then it's the next generation. So I try and get my daughter on board with it, but she doesn't really have much of it. I'm trying to get her to watch Back to the Future, because she's obviously never seen that. We watched the whole. She's 18 this year.
Okay, yeah.
We watched the Star Wars. From Star Wars 1 right up to the latest one, and she got into that, so I'm hoping I can do the same with Back to the Future.
Everyone likes Back to the Future. Timeless story. No pun intended.
Yeah, literally.
Yeah, I know what you mean, though. And it's like, when because we used to all talks at Play Expo, around the country when they were running, obviously, last year. It's been very different. But even there, when you'd see, parents coming along with the kids, and the kids going on the arcade machines that the parents used to play as a kid, or, a dad or a mum will sit down with a son or daughter and be like, this is a game I used to play, and let them have a go on it. That's quite heartwarming when you see that they're interested in it. So I've got a nephew, he's 7 years old now, Harry, and he's into Fortnite and all that, like kids are. But he'll still enjoy sitting down and playing Double Dragon with me, or Golden Axe or something when I'm there. So I think the same reasons that those games attracted us. I mean, they were made for kids, a lot of these games. So they've still got kind of the primary colours and the great sound effects, and that stuff that drew us in probably still works for kids today on some level.
Yeah, definitely. I remember going to the Play Expo at Manchester, and I tried to get her to look at the retro stuff, and I was there playing sensible soccer. I'm thinking, where's she gone? I turned around, she was at the PlayStation stand, because I think they've got the demo with the arrow. Is it Zelda or Link doing the arrow?
Yeah, okay.
So she would play that, and I'm thinking, you go and play that, I'll carry on with sensible soccer then.
I do always think there's a bit of that. I mean, it's kind of like, I always, people always say, I see people on forums and stuff like, I want to get my son into gaming. He's 5 years old now. I'm going to get him an Atari 2600 to start with. I'm going to get him an NES next year. And it's like everyone's congratulating them. But I think, that kind of reminds me a bit of like, the dad who's into like 70s rock music on vinyl and he makes his 15-year-old daughter listen to it because it's real music. Yeah. I think, if kids are interested in it, that's great. And I think there are, kind of like, when I was a kid, I'd read magazines about movies that came out before my time. My dad was into like soul and disco music, and I love 70s disco. The underground club stuff from New York and Chicago, and like Northern soul music, all that. It was before I was born, but I'm interested in it and I love it. And I think there's always going to be kids that kind of want to see where this came from and look back. But I think, sometimes it just feel like, you don't want to force it on them, I guess. You want them to have their own generation and their own, relate to their own peers as well.
You have to do it sort of subliminally, like having it play really loud. So that's exactly what my parents did. And like I say, you remember them songs. And I noticed that I watched your mixing yesterday. I like how you had the funky disco, but with the house as well. Mixed together. Because I'm more of a, what would you say, dance, a bit more dancey than that. But I quite enjoyed listening to it. It was really good.
Amazing. Because DJing, I've done it since I was about 14 when I first got my belt drive decks in my room. My mum banging on the door, turn it down. But because my dad was like, he's a soul boy, so he kind of got me into soul music and the kind of stuff I play, like soulful house and kind of it is quite heavily disco influenced and a lot of like R&B and gospel singers and that kind of stuff into it. I've always loved that. I do like, a lot of 90s dance and stuff as well, and whack a bit of sash on and get down to it. I'm fine about that. And UK Garage as well. I played UK Garage in the clubs when that was, from about 99 to 2002. I had a full-time living off that when I was at university, when I could DJ 7 nights a week back then and still going to university next morning. Couldn't do that these days.
Did you have a name? Did you have a DJ name or?
Could never think of one. I had mates who had like really cool DJ names. Could never come up with one that didn't sound really cheesy, so never bothered.
Don't hate me, but I like Scooter.
Scooter. Yeah.
But then that was
my brother's really into like happy hardcore and all that. He used to play all that stuff. So I kind of grew up hearing a lot of that kind of stuff around the house.
I always remember my friend had the old like a Walkman with the tape, and he actually drilled a hole in it so he could turn the speed up of the thing, so it turned normal songs into happy hardcore songs. How sad he was.
Funny you say that. I remember my granddad gave us his old record collection. This is probably about late 80s, 88, 89. And it was like an old record player that had a 78 mode on it as well. And we put like, Paul Weller records on and put them on 78. So they sound like chipmunks, but it sounded really funky. So yeah, we used to do that as well.
The chipmunks do.
Well, pretty much.
Can I just say it's been an absolute pleasure talking to you tonight. And thank you for taking the time out, Dan. It's been really good. And I wish you all the best for your channels and your retro podcast and everything. And thank you very much.
Yeah, Dave, it's been a pleasure coming on your channel. Really interesting chat. Keep up the good work.
Next time on A Retro Ramble.
So I suppose from a programmer's perspective, that was like you got so much choice on what you could actually do with it, with the machine.
Oh, correct. And because I was learning and discovering you had a great system manual that came with it. And the BASIC was so good, you could actually make quite decent games using BASIC. Then I wanted to do a little bit more, so I learned a little bit of machine code, a little bit of Z80 code, and added that to the BASIC thing. So one of the first bit of nice little machine code routine I wrote. So you've got 32 hardware sprites, which is fantastic compared to other machines at the time. So I wrote a little bit of machine code where you could assign a velocity, an X and Y velocity to each sprite. So all you did was assign a velocity, and then it moved it every interrupt for you.
I would just like to say a big thank you to all the special guests who took the time out of their busy schedules to appear on Retro Ramble, which is really much appreciated. Thank you. Thank you for watching this episode of A Retro Ramble with. All links to the special guest channel can be found in the description below this video. If you enjoyed watching, then please like and subscribe and click the bell notification icon to be informed of when the next episode is uploaded.